Hello everyone, I'm Soyo, and this is episode 1 of Beginner-Friendly Stellaris to Relax/Study to. In this series, we're focusing on casual gameplay in Stellaris, no super crazy meta builds, no times 25 crisis strength or anything like that, playing the game with mostly normal settings, and just focusing on enjoying the gameplay. Watching the map kind of get painted out, engaging in diplomacy or warfare with our neighbors, but again, nothing super crazy, no nerd strategies or anything like that, right? Now, I myself am not super good at this game, at least I wouldn't label myself as being good at this game, so this will by no means be a comprehensive tutorial or instructional guide on how to play the game, but I will kind of explain things as they come up in a mostly beginner-friendly way, as best I can anyways. So, before we begin, let's look at the empire we will be playing as. Now, this is an empire I designed, the Korinthi Alignment. The Korinthi Alignment uses the Under One Rule origin, and the Under One Rule origin says, amidst violence and hardship, the civilization was unified by a single leader. Consolidating power through the repression of weaker factions, they have now become a fierce advocate for science and technological advancement. In the aftermath, an uneasy peace has descended, but peace rarely lasts. Now, I like this origin for this empire specifically. We'll be playing a little bit more militaristically, which we'll talk about in a moment, and I like the idea of having a kind of unifying leader at the helm, kind of steering the empire throughout most of the game. It removes a little bit of the micromanagement as well when you have just one leader. Now, what this does for us, it gives our species the trait Perfected Genes, which increases the average lifespan of our leaders by 25 years, and it reduces the experience gain of our leaders by 15%. Now, there's some ways that we'll get around that experience gain reduction, but the plus 25 to lifespan is going to be super important for us because we're going to focus a lot on having powerful, effective, and intelligently placed leaders throughout this game. It also gives our ruler, who is pictured here in the top, the trait of Luminary. Now, his lifespan is increased by 40 years. His initial level is plus 3 instead of starting at level 1 or 2. He's going to start with level 1 or 2 plus 3. And it gives him the unique luminary trait that we see listed there. So whenever he is in the seat of power, which he always will be, our empire will enjoy a plus 1.5 bonus to stability and a plus 3% bonus to unity production from jobs that produce unity. Now, over time, this luminary trait will improve as the campaign progresses and as events happen. So we'll make sure to check in with him every so often and kind of see where his luminary trait stands later on in the game. Now, moving on to the traits of our species, we have our Perfected Genes trait, which we get from the origin, and that again boosts the leader lifespan and reduces their gain of experience. I have then selected the Talented trait, which makes our leaders 10% cheaper in upkeep, and it reduces their amount of maximum negative traits by 1. Again, this is going to be a playthrough that focuses a lot on buffing our leaders, having good leaders, and so I wanted to pick as many things as I could that would help that. The Slow Breeder's trait is next. I chose this because it gives us a -2, so it allows us to pick 2 additional points worth of traits. And what this does is it reduces our population growth speed by -10%. There's some ways to get around this, so I'm not overly worried by that. I kind of view this as free trait points, really, honestly. The Strong trait is next. The Korinthi people are very strong. Our armies deal 20% more damage during planetary warfare, and our worker populations produce plus 2.5% extra materials, extra resources. That will come into play later. The army damage is good in the early game, and the worker pop resource output, anything I can be doing to increase the amount of resources I'm making, I will of course do. Lastly, we have the Intelligent trait. I tend to pick the Intelligent trait on a lot of my empires that I play because it gives us a flat 10% increase to research across all 3 kind of categories there. Again, playing as somewhat of a militaristic empire, it's going to be important to get that technological advantage early on, not to the extent that a purely tech-focused empire probably would, but just enough to give ourselves the edge in combat. Moving on to our government and ethics, so we are a dictatorship, so our leader pictured here, who we'll introduce in a moment, he will remain in power until he dies, in which case a new leader will be elected. What this does for us is it reduces the size of our leader pool, which is the amount of available leaders to hire, by 1, but it does buff the experience gain by 25%. So look, we've already gotten around the -15% that we took from the Under One Rule origin. And it also reduces our pop amenities usage, so the amount of amenities that our population wants, by 2%, and it increases our edicts funds by 10. Now edicts we'll get into later. I don't really use them a whole lot in this game because I don't like all the micromanagement, but they can be beneficial, especially in the early game. But edicts are basically policies you can put in place for your government to provide some kind of bonus at a cost, so we have the ability to afford a little bit more. When it comes to our ethics, the ethics of our society, we are militarist, which allows us to use the no retreat war doctrine, which is just another approach to war. It reduces the cost of our claims, so whenever we're laying a claim on a system, we're saying to the owner of that system, I'm going to fight you for that, and if I win, I get to keep it. So it reduces the cost of claims by 10%, and increases the fire rate of our ships by 10% as well. And then we have the fanatic xenophobe trait. We are fanatically xenophobic. This gives us the ability to purge alien species from our empires, to enslave alien species in our empires. It reduces opinions of other species. We are not allowed to give aliens full citizenship or full military service, and we are not allowed to welcome refugees into our empire as well. The benefits that we get, because so far we're sounding like we're kind of bad guys, but this gives us the benefit of reducing the cost of our star bases by 40%, and that's going to be super important in the early game when we're kind of scrambling for territory. That will allow us to build more outposts sooner, to grab more territory before our opponents can. And our population growth speed is increased by 20%, so again that gets us around that trait we picked of slow breeders. We now technically have a plus 10% to pop growth speed, negating that minus 10% there with the 20. Back to here. Now when it comes to our civics, I selected the Philosopher King civic, which gives our ruler, again pictured right here, a plus 5 to his effective skill level. So he will not truly be plus 5 in skill, but for the purpose of calculating his buffs and benefits to the Empire, the game will consider him to be 5 above whatever he is. And it increases the experience gain for our other council members, which again I think is important to have as much buffs to our leadership as we possibly can. I've also selected the Hyperspace Specialty Civic, which gives us a little bit of a buff to our planet sensor range, plus 2, an increase to our sublight speed for our ships, and a 15% bonus to physics research speed. I like this trait a lot. I think it's really important in the early game. It helps you kind of plan out which territory you're grabbing, and then later on in the middle to late game when you're engaging in warfare, it provides a little bit of extra intel and a little bit of a speed boost to your ships to kind of give you the edge during combat. For our advisor voice, I had it on Xenophobe, but I like the authoritarian one, to be honest.
The weak govern, the strong rule.
So I'm going to keep it on that one for now. And we will move on to our ruler. Our ruler is Arana Valkorion. He is our Primus, is his title. He is at the helm of our empire. He's steering the ship. I chose the last name Valkorion, taking some inspiration from Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I thought that was a cool name, so I chose it for him. And you know, we're not exactly the good guys anyways. When it comes to his traits, he comes from a scientific background, and I have chosen the Unwavering Aggressor perk for him. This gives our ships plus 5% fire rate, plus 5 tracking, and plus 5 chance to hit during combat. Later on in the game, we will hopefully spec into some more material or resource-oriented traits, but for now I think that this gives us just a little bit more of a bonus to our early game combat, our early game warfare, should it arise. Now, in general, the theme I've gone for with this empire is I want them to be all about exerting their influence over the galaxy, right? We are fanatically xenophobic, so we don't believe in other species. We think that we should be above them, and whether that's through warfare and taking their systems from them, or through diplomacy and vassalizing or subjugating other empires, we want to have as much control as possible. That is really all for the introduction. I guess I should introduce the home world, which I can never find when I'm looking for it. City appearance? No. Origin? No. Well, either way, our home world will be called Azoria. For those who are familiar with Magic the Gathering, I like to name my planets after the guilds, because it's easy, they sound fantasy enough. And then we're using the Latin kind of name list, there it is, name list, the kind of Latin-inspired ones, because it's really easy to kind of take a word that already is in the game, or a word that you have from the guild names, and just make it look Latin. Who really cares, right? So we have that going for us, and I guess I'll show our ships off as well. We're using the Necroid ship design. This would be what our battleships would look like, but in the early game we're going to be looking at a lot of corvettes. I chose this design because I think it's a good blend between the sleek, elegant look you get from the avian ships and the brutal military look of the Imperial ships. I think Necroid really bridges the gap very effectively. So alright, let's jump in. I'm going to save my changes. Now when it comes to our gameplay settings, we're playing on a medium galaxy with 4 arms. I like to randomize the amount of AI empires just to add a little bit of spice to the game. I'm going to crank this up to 5 to 11 if I can though. 4 is a little too low, just in case. I turn off advanced AI starts. I think that really it's just RNG. Sometimes they suck the fun out of the game if you spawn right next to one. So I usually turn them off, but I do allow 0 to 1 Fallen Empires, 0 to 1 Marauder Empires. Everything else is kept the same. I have a random crisis type at 1x difficulty. Again, no crazy stuff. Our difficulty is Ensign, so relatively even playing field with the exception of the fact that I have a brain, the computers don't. And everything else is fairly normal. I think I turned down Abandoned Gateways and Wormhole Pairs just by a little bit, just to kind of keep things clean when it comes to the gameplay. And then I turned up our Guaranteed Habitable Worlds by 2, so we should have 3 planets, including the home world, relatively close to our starting system to colonize. So that is all. Of course, we're playing on Iron Man game mode, and I will see you in the game. And here we are. So we are in the starting kind of splash screen of the game. The game always starts you out in your system view, but if I push E on the keyboard, I can zoom out to the galaxy view. We'll take a look at our environs in a moment. Here we are. Since our civilization has always been prone to conflict, this is just rehashing the origin that we chose, but it adds some extra flavor. It says, this culture of polarization climaxed when our world was consumed by war. Amidst chaos, a leader emerged. The Primus Arana Valkorion managed to assemble a gathering of followers who were drawn to his selflessness, charisma, and authority. Finally, someone was poised to unite us. The unification was a long and painful process, but one after another, the warring factions eventually surrendered and fell in line, cowed by the Primus's promises of a future amongst the stars. For the first time in centuries, we have peace, but now under the surface, the scars of old grievances run deep. And we will push the begin button. So, in the beginning of the game, I like to keep it paused, because there's a few things that are good to do in the beginning before effects and everything start to snowball. Remember, this is an RTS game, so it runs kind of in real time, but you're able to pause it whenever you need to. So, the first thing that we'll do is look at this window on the right, and we have 2 primary tabs, our Government tab and our Ships tab. Now, what I care about right now is the Ships tab. I see 3 ships with this green icon, and what this green icon tells me is that these ships are not in the middle of doing anything. Right now they're just orbiting whichever station or system they're in. We have our military fleet, Classis 1, that is just kind of chilling right here, and it's small because we just took our first steps into space, so we only have 3 corvettes, and we can see that in this window here on the bottom left. We have 3 Elva-classed corvettes. In a moment we'll go back and look at our ship designs and maybe do some planning with that, but for now, we'll leave that. We have 2 civilian ships. We have a construction ship, the Thracia, and the science ship, the Hephaestion, or something like that. Now the science ship is what I'm looking for here. So I'm going to highlight this, and it shows us that our science ship is here at our primary station. And I'm going to push E to zoom out and look at my galaxy map. Now, this is a pretty good start, I will say. This looks fun. I see 3 planets. There's one that's arid, another that's arid, and one that's alpine. Now, the Korinthi people are, they prefer the arid planets. They find it easiest to live on arid environments, so I'm going to prioritize taking these planets first, because they'll provide me the most benefit. Now, the reason I was looking for my science ship is because the science ships are what you use to scout systems. So I have my science ship selected. I can tell because I see it in the bottom left here. I'm going to right-click on this system and click Survey. Now, in order to claim a system, you first have to survey it, meaning your science ship is going to go here, and it's going to scan each major planetary, or solar system body, really, that's in here, kind of take stock of the situation, and then only once we've documented every planet in the system may we send a construction ship, like this one here, to that system to build a starbase. That was how we claim that system as ours. That's going to bring it into the fold, and then after we've done that, we can send a colony ship to the planet. So we've got some work ahead of us. So I've queued up that science ship. When we unpause, it's going to automatically go down there and start surveying. What I'm going to do with my construction ship is look around the system for any of these resource icons with a white number under it. Now, the green numbers mean that I'm already exploiting that resource. I already have a mine built, so we see that here Pegasus, this moon or planet, looks like it's a barren world, has a mining station that we started the game with above it, and that is giving me 5 minerals per month. Up here we see our resources, we'll talk about that, but I'm getting 5 minerals per month from here. So generally you're going to start with 1 or 2 resources in your home system that are not being exploited, and here we have one right here, Colonia Emerita. So I select my construction ship, and I'm going to right click on the planet and tell it to build a mining station. Now most of the structures you're building in the game, be it mining stations, buildings on your planets, or anything like that, are going to cost minerals. So I chose to increase my mineral production before I could increase my engineering research here or my energy production here, because minerals are going to be a little more important for me right now. So we've done that, but we have 4 notifications up here in the top that we should address before we unpause as well. Now these orange ones, these are the most urgent kind of notifications that we have, so I'll do those first. And the game's just telling me I have not picked a path for research yet. So I'm going to click on here, and we see we have physics, society, and engineering research options. So I'm going to start with physics, and I'm going to look and see. We have a few options here. I'm going to choose to research administrative AI, which will increase our research speed by 5% when that project is done. We see that this costs 2,000 research points, which will take us 74 months to complete with our current rate of research production. So I'll click on that, move to society research, same thing. I'm going to pick biodiversity studies. This will take, similarly, 97 months, because we don't have the same buff that we have at the physics to society. But when this is done, this will increase our society research by 20%. So I'll click that, I'll continue on to engineering research, and I'll pick the same option but for engineering. So we have options for other things. We could increase or research better armor for our ships, or research basic strikecraft, but in the early game I choose to research the buffs to research, because later on we will benefit from those increased speeds. So we've done that. We have 1 more notification to handle. We have an available leader trait for our Primus. So I'll click on this. Here is our Primus. Looks like he started at level 4. He is age 38, and he is a xenophobe. Right now he has that luminary trait we talked about, and the unwavering aggressor trait, but we're able to pick a few more. So we're going to click on this, and we can either choose the Spark of Genius trait, which increases research by 3%, or Logistic Understanding, which reduces ship upkeep and army upkeep as well. Right now I don't have a whole lot of ships, so I'm going to go with research speed and hope that later on we get some more buffs to ship cost. So I'll pick that. We have 2 more coming. We can now increase research speed by another 6%. We can pick that aforementioned Logistic Understanding, or we can increase our edicts fund and reduce the upkeep. I'm going to double down on the research and pick Spark of Genius 2. Then we have Statistician, which, oh boy, gives us another boost to research speed, plus 5%. So I'll pick that, and we are all kitted out with the Primus for now. Let's see what that did to our research projections. I think once we unpause, these numbers will update. Take a look around one more time just to see if there's anything else I should do, and I think I'm going to unpause. So let's unpause. We will watch the construction and science ships move off to do their jobs. And that is wonderful. They will get started on that. So as they are working, before we have anything to do, let's talk a bit about the UI here. So here on the left we have everything from our situation log all the way down to the market. Our situation log is kind of like the quest journal that you'd see in like an RPG type game. So when situations arise, we will see them tracked here. Obviously we don't have any just yet. We have our government screen here. I can look at our policies and edicts and make sure everything is in order. We currently have an expansionist stance, which gives us a reduction to outpost build cost, an increase to development speed, and 100% border friction. And in general, I'm happy with where things started here. I like to start with a mixed economy, meaning that we are producing equal parts alloys to consumer goods.
Construction complete.
And our first construction's done, so it looks like the Thracia has completed the mining station in our home system. So let's select it here in the window and find something else for it to do. So we have 130 minerals available, and it's going to cost 100 to build any of these stations. So I'm going to build a research station over Nova Roma here. That will give us an extra 2 engineering research per month. It's pretty big. Right now we're only making 20, so plus 2 is going to be great. Let's talk about these resources up here. We have our energy credits here. Now energy credits, in the lore, it's like a currency. It's just like money. And these are used for a variety of things. Our ships require energy to upkeep, some buildings on planets require energy to upkeep, so generally we're going to want to make sure that we are always making as much of this as we can. We can also use energy to buy other resources or sell other resources for energy. So if you have too much of one resource and not enough of another, you can swap them for each other. Next we have minerals, which again is kind of like the raw building material that we use to build stations or buildings or anything to that effect. And that is what minerals here are for. We have food, which is used for our population. You know, people have to eat, so we have to make food. And those three are our basic resources. Those are raw goods, basically. Now next we have consumer goods, which is an advanced material. Consumer goods are produced using materials. So materials turn into consumer goods using special buildings on our planets. Like this here, we have a district called an industrial district. We have 2 of these. And these provide one job for artisans, one job for metallurgists, who turn minerals into either consumer goods or alloys. Now alloys, speaking of, is this resource here. And alloys for this run through are going to be the most important resource that we can possibly have. Alloys are what you use to produce your ships, you produce your star bases with alloys, you upgrade your ships and star bases with alloys as well. So it's kind of the military resource is a way to think about it. Consumer goods is like your iPods, iPhones, you know, consumer goods as it were. Alloys is for the military. So super important that we really emphasize our alloy production, especially in the early game. Next we have influence, so these resources out here are not necessarily mined or collected in most cases. Influence is, I believe, the rarest resource in the game if you want to think about it that way, because you can't buy any of it. You only make what you make, and it's very limited. Influence is like our political clout, our political power. So anytime we're going to make a claim on a system, we have to spend influence to do it. Anytime we're going to claim a new system, or I just said claim, but anytime we're going to build an outpost to take a new system into our borders, it also costs influence. We make influence through power projection, which is the ratio of ships that we have in our military fleets to the size of our empire. The more ships we have, the more power we have, therefore the more influence we have. There's a few other ways to buff our influence production as well, but in general, we want to build up our fleets early to maximize the amount of influence we produce as well. Next we have unity. Unity is, I don't really know how to describe what this would be in like real life, but you use unity to upgrade your government, to upgrade, to pay for your leaders really. Anything that has to do with your society, you spend unity for. There are ways to produce unity as well. Again, with these districts and buildings here, we have an administrative office, which houses 2 bureaucrats, and they turn consumer goods into unity. So that's one way to produce unity there. There's a few other ways with like percentage buffs and things like that as well. Next we have our research. Research is produced by researchers and research stations. I think we have 1 research lab. Yes, we do. We have 2 researchers here that are producing 10 research in each category. We can see that in our planet production window here. We have our rare resource tab, which we won't come into until later on. That's kind of a middle game, late early to middle game thing. And then these are just info views. We have our empire size, the amount of population we have, our envoys, starbase and starbase capacity, and naval fleet and naval capacity as well. We have a pop-up here, the promise. So the promise. Primus Arana Valkorion put an end to our internal strife and brought about the unification. He came to power on a platform of patriotic unity and imperialism, promising to lead us into the stars and create a grand galactic empire. Today, our people grow impatient, and dissident voices question our leadership abilities. The Council has prepared several 40-year plans that will put these doubts to rest and propel us into the next age of our species. Let's get to work. So what this is going to do is unlock the Unifying Promise agenda, which improves ethic-based agendas for the duration of the Unifying Promise situation. And it begins the Unifying Promise event chain. That's a lot of stuff going on, so let's talk about it. So we'll click that just so it happens.
Situation log updated.
I am going to pause the game again. We're going to go a little slow to begin with as we get through all of this new information. But it mentioned that it unlocked an agenda, so let's go to our Government tab and look at our Council, which is where we are here. Now we start the game with 4 counselors in place. We have our Primus at the helm, our Head of Research, our Minister of Defense, and our Minister of State. Now each of these, besides the Primus, is a level 1 leader, and we can see that depending on what type of leader they are, Prima Atia is a scientist, Quintus is a commander, and Posthumus is an official. Now depending on what type of leader they are, they provide different kinds of buffs to the Empire or any planet or sector that they're governing. And we don't really need to get too much into that. these are all in the right place right now anyways. But we have this icon here. This is an agenda that we're currently working to pass. We have 13 months before this agenda is done. By the way, our date is up here. When we unpause, we progress by several days every second. So it gave us a new agenda. We can look here, and I believe it gave us the Unifying Promise agenda. So this will take 148 months to launch. When we start it, our citizen population becomes 5% happier, and our council agenda speed increases by 20%. And once it's launched, it allows us to approach the Unifying Promise situation differently, gives us a random Luminary Insight effect, and our ethic-based agendas gain Luminary Insight effects as long as that's in effect as well. Lots of stuff going on. What's that situation thing? If we look at the Unifying Promise situation here, this is our quest that we're basically doing here, given to us by the origin that we chose. And it says, during the unification period, our Primus swore that one day our people would settle on other planets. To many, that view has become almost prophetic. Others doubt that it will ever become a reality. Recently, and despite advances in faster-than-light technology, some have started using this unified promise to undermine the rule of Primus Arana. So we want to prove them wrong, right? We have dissidents in our empire that are saying, well, he's a hack, he made false promises just like every other politician, so we should prove them wrong. How do we do that? Let's go to our situation log and find out. Here's our Unifying Promise situation itself. We must deliver on our promises. The Korinthi Alignment citizens are counting on us to grow into a spacefaring empire in the coming 40 years. It's kind of a tight schedule. We should strive to expand our nation by controlling systems, colonizing planets, and, if we encounter other empires, signing defense pacts. After 40 years, our ruler's luminary trait will improve for every 15 points of progress we've made. So far, we haven't made any progress. We should probably pick up the pace a little bit, huh? So I'm going to unpause. We have a few other things to handle with housekeeping. We have this little building icon next to Azoria, our empire capital, which is located in the Diadem system, by the way. So we see we actually have 2 building slots open. That's down here. Now when we're looking at our planet view, we have a lot to take in. Our districts tab here. The most important thing for right now is to look at this little area here. We see 3 kind of blocked out squares and 7 open squares. This tells us how many available districts do we have left. The filled-in squares under each of these district types
Construction complete.
tell us how many of that type of district we have already. We have 3 city districts, 2 industrial, 2 generator, 2 mining, and 2 farms. And we're able to build 7 more. The non-filled-in squares tell us how many more of that specific type of district we can build as well, so you can kind of see how that planning works there. In our buildings area, we have buildings, as it were, that provide special effects and special jobs. Now this stuff up here, this number here is our stability. It's how stable is our planet. Is everybody getting along and working together, or are there like riots in the streets happening? 69%, nice. Stability right now is giving us some boost to our worker production, as you can see here. We have our number of population. We currently have 28 population. In my headcanon, I believe that this is 28 billion, because it doesn't make sense to say that your planet has 28 people on it. So I believe that each population is 1 billion people. That's just how I think of it anyways. And all 28 of the population on this planet are Korinth people. We have 8 available housing, 7 amenities right now, 1 available job, and nobody that is unemployed. I'm going to designate our planet as our empire capital, which will provide some bonuses to stability, amenities, and some government type things, as well as 10% more resources per job. And I'm not going to automate any planets in this run through. I don't like automating planets. We can look at our population tab. We see that we are currently growing. We need 108.4 population points, whatever that is, in order to get our next population. And we're currently making 4.9 a month. So in about a year, we'll have another pop ready for us. Then here we see all of our jobs. Now there's 3 kind of stratum to our jobs, just like in society. We have our rulers, our specialists, and our kind of grunt workers. And we can micromanage and kind of look in here and see what each type of job is making, if we so choose. It's not super important right now, but later on, when we're colonizing new planets and really having to crunch for resources, that will become more important to pay attention to. We have our army tab. We currently have a defense army on the planet. We spawn with this in place, so we have about 228 army power. Later on, once we get to war, we can recruit some assault armies from the population of this planet to send out to go to war. We have the holdings tab, which we do not care about right now. Let's unpause again. Now we finished one of the buildings in the diadem system. That would be our engineering research station over this gas giant. So I'm going to click our construction ship and build our last available structure over Colonia Aurora. I'm going to build an energy mining station. Now, I have enough alloys. I have 253 alloys. I'm going to go ahead and build another science ship so that I can start exploring this branch of the galaxy. I plan to send the Hephaestion, or whatever. I plan to send Atia, the person that's in here, to explore this branch and kind of see what we have. So I'll make another science vessel to crew and send out in this direction. I'm also going to go ahead and make a new construction ship as well, because I'll probably be building on both sides of the Empire here in the beginning. We have another pop-up, the discovery of alien life. I'm going to click the go to button or push the letter Q to zoom in. And I always do this whenever I have a pop-up so I can kind of have a sense of place about where this is happening. So it says, the Hephaestion has made a startling find on Chi Draconis 3. That's this planet that we're serving, the habitable one, as it were. The planet is teeming with alien life. For the first time in history, we have discovered or encountered life forms that do not originate on Azoria. This amazing discovery has silenced those who believe that we were alone in the universe. Although none of the alien creatures found on Chi Draconis 3 are sapient, it is likely only a matter of time before we encounter beings that are. We may not be alone out there, and we're going to get some society research out of this. We'll take it. And so once we're done surveying the system, we should be able to colonize that planet, and it already has life waiting for us. The Calipius is done, so I'm going to send that out here. But you'll notice I can't send the science ship to survey anything. It's X'd out, because we don't have a scientist crewing the vessel. So I'm going to go down here to the ship window, click the leader slot, and hire a leader. Now currently we only have 2 scientists. We have capacity for 3, so we won't take any too much of a hit from hiring another one here. And let's see. So our scientist here in our leader pool, this is who we have already. Now she is crewing her own ship. She's the one that's out here. We have 2 available in leader pool. They are both, one is 29, one is 36. This one has the trait Intuition, which allows him to research anomalies faster. This one, he has a council effect, so it's looking like this guy, the first one, is going to be the most beneficial to us. Not only is he younger, so he'll be able to serve longer, his trait also applies to the ship, not to the council. This council effect only applies if he's on the council, which he will not be. He'll be crewing the ship. So I'm going to hire Vibius Minucius. He's going to cost 100 unity now and 2 unity per month. We have 278 and we're making 17, so I'm happy with that. So we'll hire him, and now we will ask him to go out to this neighboring system and survey it. Let's look at this pop-up. The Korinthi Alignment is abuzz with the news of alien organisms discovered some time ago. While far from intelligent, there is life out there, an inescapable reality and a deeply unsettling prospect. Now, because we're xenophobes, we don't like this. If we played another origin like the Xenophile, or just left those out, we may say, yay, it's happy, or awesome, or, get some research out of it. But we're just unhappy about that. So click that and keep it going.
Construction complete.
Now, our last construction in the diadem system is complete, so there is nothing left for this construction... Sorry, so many pop-ups. There's nothing else for this construction ship to do. I'm going to send it out to Chi Draconis to prepare, because once we've surveyed the system, it will be there ready to build the outpost for us. First contact protocols. This is asking us how would we like to handle our first contact if we ever were to meet another intelligent civilization. We can't say that we greet them with open arms because we're xenophobic, so I'm just going to say it's wise to be cautious.
Situation log updated.
Another pop-up. It says, habitable world survey. So basically it's asking, would we like to make a point of finding life on other planets, or should we focus on other things? Now, I know that if we were to say this is a good initiative, there's a research bonus at the very end of the chain after you've surveyed a certain amount of habitable planets. But what I would rather do, because again, we're xenophobic, we don't really care, we want to conquer, not to meet. So I'm going to say we have more important matters to focus on, and that will give us 182 unity. And we hear the little chime. That was just enough unity to allow us to unlock our first tradition. So the tradition window pops up here. That's also right here, Society Management Traditions. And what traditions are, these are pathways that you kind of pick to go down that really define the direction of your society. We can pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them, and each time we finish a pathway, we unlock a powerful Ascension perk that goes in this window here. So I'm going to pick our first one. Now there's plenty to go through here. We don't need to break these down right now because we'll come across them as we play, but I will pick the prosperity trait or tradition to start with. Prosperity says there is no better indicator of the success or failure of a star nation than the strength of its economy. So when we adopt this, we unlock the agenda Favored Society, which is an agenda we can have our council pass, and it gives us 20% increased mining station output. Now, mining stations are any of these things built in the systems that are mining resources. That's going to be pretty good. It's going to increase our minerals, our energy, and later on maybe even some alloys if we get lucky. As we go down this path, we will see that most of these perks are related to prosperity, to resource production or consolidation. So we'll get into these as we go along, but for now I'm just going to select this.
Council agenda
We have
available.
unlocked that agenda. Now I'm going to ignore that for now because we're currently working on an agenda and we're almost done with it. So I'll ignore that for now. I'm going to unpause again. Lots of pop-ups and pausing. Let's go to our fleet manager while we wait for the surveys to be over. I'm going to go to our ship designer. Now for you, always unlock the auto-generate designs. Always uncheck that. You don't want the game making your ships for you. I'm going to look at our Elva class ship. So here's our Corvette. We currently have 3 of these in Classis 1. We have 2 small mass drivers equipped and 1 nuclear missile battery equipped.
Council agenda ready.
Some stuff happens, so I'm going to pause the game while we finish this little section. The small mass driver costs 10 alloys, uses 5 power, and basically what this does is it's good against shields. I don't really care too much about all the number breakdown and all that. I don't do these super meta builds, but I do want to design the ships to be good at countering certain types of ships. So the mass driver does more damage to shields, less damage to armor. The nuclear missiles penetrate shields. They ignore the shields, but they don't have any bonus to other things. So what I'm going to do is get rid of the 2 guns, click on the small slot, and we have another weapon that we haven't looked at yet, the red lasers. Red lasers are bad against shields, but good against armor and hull. So what that means, your ship has kind of 3 life pools that it pulls from. You have your hull points, your armor, and your shields. Your shields are your first line of defense, your armor is your second, and your hull is the ship itself, the actual body of your ship. If you lose your hull points, you lose your ship. So, in the early game, I like to outfit my Corvettes with purely nuclear missiles. It gets us past any shields we may run into. We don't have to worry too much about being countered one way or the other, because we can just kind of do our own thing, ignoring shields. We have 2 small deflectors equipped, and 1 plate of armor equipped. I'm happy with that. I'm going to leave that how it is for now. All of these components out here, we don't have any alternatives for yet, so we'll leave them as they are, and I'm going to hit save. It says override, I'm going to say yes, and that's that. I'm not going to worry too much about our defense platform designs yet, because it's going to be a while before we either can afford or afford to care about the defense platforms, so I'll ignore that for now. Looks like our agenda finished, so our citizen pops for the next 10 years will be 10% happier. I'm happy with that. Let's pick a new one. So we have a few options with our agendas here. I'm going to choose to expand the council. You'll notice we have an empty seat over here, and by expanding the council we'll unlock that. We'll be able to put another leader into power, reap the rewards from their benefits, and keep moving forwards. I think that what we'll do is we'll do the expand the council first. That will take 148 months to complete. Once that is done, we will then do the unifying promise agenda here to unlock some different approaches for the situation. So let's do that. We will do expand the council, and the council's going to get to work on that. I'm going to go back to our ships tab, see if we have anybody that's not working. We have the Thracia is waiting for the system to be surveyed. Numidia just got done, so I'm going to send Numidia out in the other direction to prepare for claiming these systems here. Our Classis military fleet has this little arrow here that is telling us we can upgrade it, and that's because we changed the class of those ships.
Star system
So we're going to
charted.
say upgrade to send them back to the starbase. They are going to pull the guns off and put the torpedoes on. The Cheater Cronus system was surveyed, so we are ready to claim it into our empire. Our science vessel no longer has anything to do, so I'm going to send them up to Karathor, the next system, to begin surveying there. Then I will ask our construction vessel,
Vessels upgraded.
to build the starbase. And it's going to get started on that, so we'll see. He's going to start building a base right here by the sun. Once this base is done, we will be able to colonize these planets and exploit these resources. So we're kind of moving along. Now right now, just in my agenda for planning future in the game, I see that we're not making enough consumer goods. We're kind of stagnating right now. We're not really losing any, but we're not making any. That's going to be important because some of my population, like my researchers, are going to consume consumer goods. That's what they want. Each researcher eats one food and takes
Construction
2 consumer
complete.
goods. So we'll need to keep that in mind. Looks like we have finished the starbase. I'm going to tell the ship to start building mining stations. Now, once you have enough minerals that you don't have to plan out which specific one you do, you can just pick the ship, click the system, and tell it to build any available mining stations. And that's what we'll do from now on. Now, I just know that in order to colonize this planet, we're going to need 200 of these 3 resources, and currently we only have enough food. So let's buy some consumer goods. Now we have 120, we will just buy 250, because we could always use some more. And you notice the cost goes up. This functions just like the economy in real life, supply and demand. If you buy more, they cost more. If you sell more, they cost less. We'll need some more alloys as well, so we'll buy enough of those, and we should have enough to colonize our first planet. So I am going to rename the system using that Magic the Gathering naming convention. So I'm going to call this system Boros. And now that changes the names of the bodies. This is now Boros 3. We will colonize Boros. So we see Boros 3 is an arid world, 80% habitable for our pops, which is pretty good. And it looks like it's a decent size, 13 size. We can build a lot of agriculture districts if we choose to, but we're good on food for now. We'll be good on food for a while. I think what I'll do instead is once we've colonized this planet, I'm going to make it a factory world. We'll be able to specify that this planet is specifically for making alloys and consumer goods. But we've got some time before then, so I'm going to click the colonize button. I'm going to pick our species, and we will name the colony Boros. I like to name colonies after the systems that they're in. It makes it easier for me to remember. And so that is in progress. So our shipyard here at Diadem should be making a colony ship. Takes a year. Once the ship is made, it's going to automatically go to Boros and colonize that planet. And I think we will end episode 1 here. So thank you so much for watching. This is my first time really making this kind of anything. I've never done this before. If you have any recommendations for production or style or anything, please leave them in the comments down below. If you don't have any recommendations, still leave a comment, because why not? Tell me what your favorite government ethic is in Stellaris, if you know, and why isn't it xenophobe? Alright, thank you again for watching. I will be back some point in the future with episode 2.